Okay, so you've got your top and your bottom pieces, and you've put your notches at the centre front and then made the quarter marks. Then you've lain the bottom piece on top of the other one, and now we're just going to start off by doing the outside seam and get some action out of this foot pedal, and off we go. Now remember, you've got your centimetre seam allowance, and you can just pull the pins out as you go by and just stick to that centimetre seam allowance all the way around. So that's the easy bit. It's not going to take you too long, I hope. And the pins are there to just keep everything in position. And everything you do with the outer, you also do with the lining. So you don't need to do any fancy stitches with the lining, but basically you'll sew the outside and then you'll sew on the band. So I'm going to show you how to do that shortly. Now here we go. Now when you did the peak on your Baker Boy toile, you did a top stitch around it, and I'm going to do that same top stitch on here, because what it does is it makes the outside edge just sit a little bit more rounded, and we're going to do the stitch so that we can see it from the top, and the seam parts are going to go downwards towards the band. So using my sense of touch, I'm just going to pull these bits over towards the body of the machine. So let's just get started. And now just watch that. My little foot has a groove where the needle drops in, and then it has like two skis, and I've got a couple of mil gap between that little groove and the skis, and that's where I'm watching that seam edge go into, so that way I can control the distance that little top stitching line goes from the seam. And it's not quite as quick as doing that first lot of sewing, and you just take the time it takes, and all the while my thumb is just making sure that the fabric underneath in the seam is sitting in the right place, that is, that it's all going over to that direction. So I don't need to look at it because I know it's doing the right thing, because my thumb is telling me. Okay, so this is all going to make this sit very nicely. After we've done this stitch line on the outer, we're not going to do it on the lining because it's a lot simpler job for the lining. After we've done this, we're actually going to clip off some of the fabric that's sticking out from our top stitch seam, because it just reduces the bulk and makes it sit a little bit nicer. So this is riveting viewing, I know. Now when you're sewing on the band, the first thing that you need to do, and I'm just going to start talking you into it now because I'm not going to bore you by trimming right away. There we go. And you just go a couple of centimetres beyond where the stitching started, and then that's your end. Now with this, we're just going to do the 1 centimetre seam allowance to get this band sitting nicely. And we're also going to do a little top stitch on this one as well. So reverse at the beginning and the end, just because we don't want it to tear away. And we're just going to do the same thing here. We're just going to do a little top stitch, top and bottom, and we're going to help it get started, do a little reverse, because we really don't want any stitches coming away here. So just to the end, that's perfect. Now I haven't got any notches on the band, but I have on the inside of my it's not a pumpkin, it's a pancake, this one. So there'll be notches there. So I'm going to I know where the centre back is now, and I'm just going to do notches at the front, same as we did with the toile really. And then we're going to put that front together with the back and put the two side marks on. And then we're going to look for pins. There's usually a few pins sitting in this channel here, so I'm happy with that. Now with this, we're putting the right sides together. So, and because every quarter is identical, it doesn't really matter where you start. So just pin the edges together neatly, and you'll find the next quarter mark, and they should sit quite close to where they each are. So they should be easy enough to do. And then you can see there, that's going to come together quite nicely. So we might need another couple of, one thing I forgot to mention, just tidy this up by clipping away the fabric so that you've got a slightly shorter thing there. So that's our centre back. We've just located it, and then we probably should have done the overlapping stitches at that point, but because this is such a textured fabric, I think I'll get away with that. And that goes there like that. And then I think I'd like to have another pin between each of those quarters. So let's just give that a little stretch and draw that down to the edge so that they're together, and put some pins in there and continue doing that all the way around. So edges together, drop a pin in. Now I wouldn't put more than 8 pins on there, because I think that should be enough to give you the guidance. If you really want to, you can do more, but I reckon 8 will do the trick. So your call on that one. Now same thing applies when you're putting this together. The free arm is good so that you can have the band underneath and the tricky bit on top, and this time we will start at the centre back, and we'll just drop that in by that 10 centimetre, 10 mil it is. So, and then we just chug along, and again there's no prizes for being super speedy here, so just accurate sewing is what we're looking for, and just concentrate on what you're seeing to the right of the foot, and don't take the pins out till you get to them. And that way, don't let any of the fullness or looseness or tightness go beyond that pin, so then you won't have a disaster at the end. So I'll just chug along here. And the same way that I clipped the seam at the back of the hat, I'm going to do that around the top stitch seam at the edge. And we're not going to do any top stitching or anything on this. We're just going to let that sit quite neatly. Pin out. And again, when we're sewing with our sewing machine, we're not trying to force it through. We're just going to let it feed through. What are you doing there? That's not part of the program. Okay, crack on with that. And just make sure that those edges sit together. That's really super important. Pin out. Whoa, we're nearly done. Okay, so then I've just gone over a little bit. Now, there is one other little trick that I can do, and that is, if you want to, turn your sewing machine onto zigzag, cut this down to about half the width that it is. Now, I'm not going to make you watch this all the way through, but I will cut some away and I'll do the rest later. But you can do that, and then set your zigzag up, drop it down onto there, and you can just inside that seam, you can just zigzag that. And I've got it upside down. I've got a world of pain, but because that's all neatly stitched, you can just do that, and that reduces the amount of bulk. And anything like that you do, if you have a look at that, you can see that zigzag stitch, it just makes it sit really nicely. And you can see that top stitch seam, pretty damn gorgeous if I do say so myself. And later on you will make the lining exactly the same, and then we're going to stick them together. So we're going to have the wrong side in on the inside of this one, and we're going to put the lining in that's the right way out, and then we're going to machine them together before we later, and I will demonstrate this one in another video, before we sew this stuff on. And then if need be, that'll be the view that you see inside. And then if you want to, you can actually top stitch that or just press it to make it stay in place. So that, I hope, will get you in action. I'd buy that if I was Gay Waterhouse and going to the Easter races. I think I'd be very happy with that. Okay,